All right, everybody, welcome to episode 13 of the Business Blueprint. This week we are going to talk some designer stuff. I had the utmost amazing experience. My first time working with a designer. This was my first time, and we got to do it at our own personal office that we just wrapped up this year. And I will say, it was definitely a game changer in regards to some of the style and things that were done there that I certainly wouldn't have done myself. I would like to introduce Amy Hawkins of HSD Services. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, why don't we just get a little bit into how did you get into interior designing? I think a lot of people think they're designers, but they're just not really designers, right?
Yeah.
And what kind of led you down this path?
Oh my gosh, it's such a crazy story. So, growing up, I learned how to flip houses with my dad. So my dad was flipping houses before it was a show on HGTV, and so I learned a lot of construction things such as like drywall, whatever. And as I progressed through to college, and after college, I started working as a property manager for some people on the side. And then I bought my first home, first home at 24, and that's when I really got into it. So I started, not only doing, flipping the house itself and updating it, but then also designing it to how I wanted. And, one house led to 2 houses, led to 10 houses. And over time, as I was doing all these different projects for myself, friends of family started noticing the work I was doing, and, asked me to come and work for them and do design work for them, and that's really how I got into it. So I'm not formally trained. I always say I learned over probably 25, 30 years of experience, but it's really gotten to be a great opportunity for me to provide for other people and what I do in their homes.
Yeah, and I did you manage the construction on these first properties too?
Yeah.
Or did your dad kind of assist you and help you as just more like a guardrail, just kind of bump you back in line when things were a little bit sketchy, right?
I mean, yes and no. So my dad definitely was, I would call him, hey dad, I need to do
sure,
this.
That's what I meant. Like somebody just question bumps you back into space.
Right. So, but then there was always the calls like, Dad, I did this, and then he was like, what did you do? And then I knew I was, screwed. But yeah, so I kind of, we actually built our first house when I was going into 8th grade, and my dad, had me there, and I was on the roof, nailing shingles down. And that's how I got, I learned. But by the time I got my own house at 24, I really started experimenting with all right, I want to do a new kitchen, and then I learned the hard way. This is going to be super expensive. Yep. So I always joke that everything I learned how to do, I learned how to do because we were poor growing up, and that kind of led me to where things were. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, that's a giant separation gap just because, and again, I haven't worked with a ton of designers, so I don't want to speak for everybody, but I would have to say that a lot of them really don't understand the structural component side to the construction, right?
100%.
Like how things go together. Okay, yeah, you might be able to pick out certain stuff, but, adding that additional component of, hey, this throw out a build or a renovation or this or that, assisting with connecting dots to the right contractors and the right things in the right places is extremely important. I mean, not to say that putting furniture and color palettes and things together aren't important. I think, from someone who's giving wisdom to a client also, you're also there advocating for a client and pushing them in the right direction of, hey, I've had positive experiences with this person because of these reasons of the construction. It's a huge thing. What kind of made me think a lot about this is we did a project with 84 Lumber in Washington, and they brought in their designer. And I've never worked with one on a new construction build because most people don't do it or don't bring them. But man, in the end, whether it was the wallpaper and the colors and everything just pulled together much differently than just your typical home of, all right, this house is done, are you ready to move in? From the furniture they picked out for them to the art on the wall to the wallpaper in the powder room, the laundry room, areas that, things I just would have never thought would have looked great, looked amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and the same thing in our office. There's definitely a lot of things, and that's why I reached out to you first, because, you know, for one, we work with together through some similar associates and people in the business, and that's how we kind of met each other. And again, this business is all relationships, and that's how this blossoms. Is one person introduces you to another, and never know where that goes. I knew that I wasn't going to take the chances or take the risk of doing this more than one time and not wanting to do it, you know, the way that I want it done. So yeah, talking with you, it was like, hey, this is what we want to do. This is this. I don't really want to be involved all in the sense of, you know, what we do, but I know I've known Faith, you're gonna, hey, if I don't like something, I'll probably tell you, but if I do like it, let's just roll with it. I have to say, you know, doing it that way, our office turned out amazing. I mean, it does. Every time I even still look through it, I'm like, yeah, this just looks super nice. Everything is crisp, clean. You know, the colors, everyone that walks through it loves it. And that's kind of the difference. You know, the difficult thing with when you purchase something yourself and then you go through a designer, or you try and do the design phase yourself, most people always resort back to something they've already done.
100%.
So that's what I've seen when we design houses in new construction. Everyone's like, well, I already did this. Like, I know it's good. Like, I'm like, okay, so you're building your home to rebuild the home you currently have. And that's fine if that's okay. You know, but when you bring somebody in with an outsider's edge, you have that person who's going to do something that's probably a little outside the box. You may not think it's going to work, but I'm going to tell you what, it's going to come out something that you would have never pictured in the end. Now, do you battle that
100%.
with a lot of clients?
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, like everybody, it's hard to trust, right?
Very.
In general, just in general. It's
because
just hard
everyone
to trust.
says what? They're visual.
Right.
Hear it all the time.
And so I think, one, you know, you have to find somebody you're comfortable with and you trust. And it's hard because, you know, even if people can go on my Instagram or go on my website and see the work I've done, but it's like when it comes to their own home, it is so hard to get your client. It's
personal now.
This is their home.
That thing I looked on Instagram wasn't mine. Now this is mine.
Yeah.
Hold on now. You're not going to do that to mine.
Yeah,
well, I
exactly.
like what you did there, but that's mine.
Exactly.
Yeah. So so what are some of the ways, you know, are you designers doing things now for visualizations? Right. I know from a building standpoint, you know, we do a lot of 3D renderings, whether it's inside, outside. It's probably similar components to what you guys do. You know, 360 outsides, matching colors and this and that. You know, now it becomes difficult with the finishes. You know, because we have a full design studio where you can pick all your finishes, but there is no real technology yet that can input every single piece of something into your home for you to see it. First off, it would cost you insane amounts of money in engineering and all the other technology and AI. Maybe we'll get there, but so what are some of the things that you're using in the design world to kind of show visuals? Yeah,
so I do a lot of 3D rendering, and I think for when I show clients the 3D rendering, I kind of preface what you just said to them is like, listen, this is just a concept, you know, like this exact couch, but I try and keep the specs kind of close so I can be like, okay, this is what we're looking for. But a lot of what I focus on and what I do in my day-to-day is kitchens and baths. So for me, you know, with the cabinetry and different things that I'm designing, a lot of times the program doesn't have exactly what I'm doing because I'm doing custom cabinetry or, you know, a custom design. So that becomes a challenge. But, you know, if you can give someone a general idea of what the space is going to look like and then provide them with actual samples of products and then kind of, you know, create that like mood board, if you will, to show the client this is what it's going to look like. Again, it's a process over time. And trust is not, you know, in any situation, trust isn't given on the first day. And it's earned. And so I think multiple appointments, multiple meetings, and just kind of holding the hand of the client and bringing them through the process. You know, I mean, so far, knock on wood, I've had a lot of satisfied customers at the end. So.
Yeah, it was, you know, I was satisfied. And I know that we did an entire house that was like 3,700 square feet. And
in like 30 days.
Yeah, I was going to say, we did it in like 30 days.
I think I started losing hair. Like, I was like so stressed out. I'm like, all right, I got to do this. I got to do this. I have to make this. If I can do this, I can do anything. I mean, it was like.
On top of, you know, you know, everybody had to kind of chip in on that. I'd build furniture and all sorts of things.
Oh, that
and
was
we made
good.
a lot of stuff work.
Yeah.
And
well, we had a budget too. So I was like, hey, give and take.
That was going to be, you know, my next topic kind of with that is everybody has a budget, right? I knew that
I was going to blow the doors off my budget, and I did. I probably went over it by $86,000, and I knew that going in. But we've made this similar mistake multiple times. So a little background about this is that room right there to our right was actually my first showroom. That little box right there was my first showroom that I ever had.
Come a long way.
Concept of just like hanging cabinets on the wall. I remember we tried to do 2 floors diagonal on there, and we toothed it. It was so fucked up. We ripped it out, and again, so we tried this one, we redid it a bunch of times, and then I went across the street to where that putting place is, or the golf place is now, the green building. Like, I painted that. That was our second office. So we redid that showroom 4 times because we just, again, didn't know what we wanted to do. It was a trial and error, and we redid the slat wall, and we never had a slat wall. Then we did a slat wall, and then we brought a bunch of things in. So I was like, okay, this one, I'm going to do it, all the way. Because we would, do a little bit, get some money, do a little bit, but then we'd have to demo some stuff that we already did to redo some stuff. I'm like, all right, I'm going to just do this one to completion. But yeah, I mean, there's always a budget, and you made it work. And that was the thing that was important for me, because I knew that I was going to get clobbered on how much construction we did, that I only had X amount of money for furniture. I knew I had X amount of money for art, and I knew I had X amount of money for, all these things. But, again, when you presented the mood board and all those different stuff, it was, good to see it by room, and you kind of get a breakdown of what's going to go where and this and that. And, again, there is trust. It's trust in the person that you select, that you're making the right decision, that, they're going to follow through with your vision, and what their vision is also going to be a nice touch too. I think a lot of people get wrapped up in trying to tell you what to do.
Right.
As opposed to this is what they do. Mm-hmm. How about just let them put out something 100%. Of they think is going to be good, and then let's get the creative brain rolling. And then if you don't like it, that's okay. I always say, anything I do, whether it's stickers on a boat or it's, something in our office, I'm not the specialist of this. Let somebody else do that. If I don't like it,
that's the challenge though, right?
Okay.
Because it's really hard to sit in front of a client and be like, let me do it. Let me handle it.
It's
take
a hard
charge,
way to word it. Yeah.
And you have to find ways to maneuver the information that you want and almost make the client feel at times that they're the one making the decision. Sure. I always tell the story. When my kids were little, I used to give my 3-year-old the same fork. Yeah. But I'd put it one in right hand and one in left hand. I'm like, which fork do you want? It's the same fork, but we're going to make a decision. So you almost have to kind of do that with your clients at times, where what needs to happen, what the end result is going to be. You just got to kind of guide them along to get there.
Yeah, because, again, I think it's so easy for somebody to put a label on themselves. It's oh, I love picking out things. Mm-hmm. Well, this isn't we're not going to Home Depot here. This isn't a weekend trip to Home Depot. When you're doing the kitchens and the bathrooms and you enter the custom world, you're not in that caliber of product. You're in a different world of product, whether it's, the high-end cabinets with different wood tonalities, or it's the accessories that come with rut cabinets, or, cuvee kitchens, or any of those things that have all these different amenities and things that people don't even know about. That's kind of the thing of you got to open them up to a world that they think they know, but they're not quite in tune with.
100%. And especially when it comes to custom cabinetry, I mean, the level of quality and then what they're used to or what they've seen,
sure.
You really have to be able to explain to the client what they're getting and why it costs what it costs. But again, I always say to my clients, listen, if you go to a house that's 100 years old, more often than not, those cabinets are still in there.
Yeah.
They're quality. Mm-hmm. You do not get that today if you go to Home
Depot.
They're
full
or certain.
wood.
Yeah, well,
they're
that's
not not plywood back. They're full wood.
They're built.
They're built out of a tree.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's some of the stuff that it's a lot of education as well, and making sure everybody understands. But I also think too, just to kind of go back, there are different types of designers.
Sure.
There are people who really love to focus on fabrics and colors, and that honestly isn't who I am.
Yeah.
I really like sitting down and doing layouts and figuring out cabinetry and building spaces and having to understand the electrical, the plumbing, what we need to do to get code. Those are the kind of things I like because it's more technical. And that's kind of just how I grew up and what I was in with the construction world. So for me, I'm like, I'll pick you a rug, but it's not what I specialize in, to be honest. I mean, I'm not the best at that.
Yeah, that construction background in the beginning kind of separates. That's the separation point, right? So, at every business, of whether it's your own business or you're inside of a business, that business does something that's different and services something different than somebody else. That's just what business is. Now, the separation point is, I always think, is what creates your business. Meaning, like, okay, like, yeah, she's willing to do the down and dirty work, as opposed to, you might bring a designer and they're like, all right, well, yeah, we'll pick that up, but you have to go see an architect too, and add that extra layer, in which you may be able to cut the middleman off of that. And we did that a lot when we brought in a draftsman, just because we eliminated the architect. We eliminated, some of that, because for one, control is always a good thing inside of a construction project. And two, I don't need the over-engineering. That was the thing for me, is, we got to cover our costs, again, and things of that nature. And our business is all about liability. Like, who touched what, who did this, when was this in, who touched it first, who put it in. So it's interesting in the fact that, with your construction background, you like actually putting together more of the how-tos of it getting to what it is, as opposed to like, all right, well, let me just pick some cabinets, some countertop, and a hand, because that almost kind of separates you from being what a selections coordinator is, as opposed to what a real designer is, and that's the interesting part of that. So are you involved, like, pre-jobs with your contractors, like pre-demo, like layout wise, how things go, like how plumbing's getting moved? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
I mean, that's what I prefer.
Yeah.
I love to come into spaces where, I really love when you're taking something that is ugly and unusable and not functional, and then turning it into something else. I mean, that is what I live for, truly. I mean, that is why I flipped houses for so long. That's why I do what I do, is because that's what, fires me up and I want to see. So I love the potential, seeing the potential in something, and knowing that, a client doesn't see that. Sure. And that's the thing, is I just visualize. I mean, that's just how my mind works. So I can walk into a room and I can see what it would look like if I did X, Y, and Z in my head, finished, done. And then I kind of have to go, all right, well, how am I going to put this on paper so everybody else knows what the hell we're doing?
Yeah, and that's a special talent. I can see it now because I've done hundreds and hundreds of projects now, but there's areas that I don't. Land is one of them. My partner Ryan is an absolute. He sees stuff that I am like, dude, I don't know how that's gonna happen. I don't know how you're gonna make that dirt do that. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's that's like awesome. Lots that are junk, I think. I'm like, dude, this lot's junk. I'm like, I'll go over and look at it. I'm like, we'll make it work. We'll just bench here to this. I'm like, I don't see that. I don't see any of that. How did you come up with that? So, but that's again, that's a big.
That's why you have a team.
Yeah, and it's a big thing too. I was gonna bring up. I'm sure you get a lot of clients just like myself. They're just unsure of what they want, or which is worse for you. I want to ask a question.
Oh boy.
A client that you have that doesn't know what they want, or a client that you do have that knows what they want but doesn't convey it correctly.
Oh God. Double-edged. That's like, what's the worst of the two evils? Probably the second one.
Second one, 100%. That's my answer.
Say the second one.
That's because what they're going to do is, in my experience, the first one we can work through.
Yeah.
We'll
it's a challenge.
It's a challenge, but we'll get through it. The second one is they'll allow you to get so far to where something's almost installed, then it's done. They're like, well, what about this? I'm like, well, that was supposed to happen 4 phases ago, and you never said a word?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Like, I can't even fix this.
I'm like shaking thinking about it, because it gets me like.
It happened. Well, I'm bringing that up because that happened to us, and we were at our other office across the street, and it was the one time we got a 1-star rating, our only 1-star that was justifiable, and I'll take the blame for it because I didn't ask enough questions early on in regards to what about this do you want? or I didn't, keep on top of like, I can tell that there's something more there, but I'm just letting it go. So that was a mistake on my end. So now it's when you get somebody, you can tell that they want to say more, but won't because they're either afraid of being wrong or they're going to be like, they're going to say something that doesn't make any sense. And they fear that. And it's like, for me, I'm like, okay, well, how do we just framework this in a manner that's like, okay, I'm not going to sound, over the top, or I'm not going to be this, but, how do you handle both situations? How do you handle the person that doesn't know what they want? And then how do you handle the person that does know what they want, but they're just not willing to convey it all the way?
So regarding the first one, when someone doesn't know what they want, I mean, Pinterest is my best friend. So, I will send, I know, and it can also be a very bad thing. It can also be the devil. But I like to start out by sending them examples of different things that I know are certain styles that they may not even know what style it is. But I'm like, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of this? Or what do you like about this? And that kind of you start to see a pattern of what they like. And even sometimes, me just going, all right, I'm just going to put something together and we'll, as a starting point. So that's kind of how I handle that. The people that know what they want but don't convey what they want, that is just, it's a challenge. I mean, it's a number of questions, like you said. You just have to ask a ton of questions, and you have to make sure you're getting what you get. My thing that drives me like absolutely batty is clients who, have an idea in their head. And a lot of times we're working with a space and they have a laundry list of things that they are looking to get in that space. And the space is only the space. And so
Especially
you can
bathrooms.
only get, and so, you can rob Peter to pay Paul here, and you can do this, and you can find all these, ingenious ways of working the space. And then you present and they're like, but I'm not getting everything I want. And those are the clients that I think sometimes can be, the hardest. And it breaks my heart because I want to make sure I give the client everything they want too. Sure. So it really comes down to, figuring out what's important to them, what they need. And it kind of ties back to that client that knows what they want. But you have to dig all that out. You have to figure out what's the most important stuff and where are we going with this. So
yeah, it's an ever-changing thing. And in the beginning, for us, it was like, okay, well, whose role is that? Well, in the beginning, I didn't have a selections coordinator. Well, in the beginning, I didn't have even a sales guy. In the beginning, I never sold new construction. In the beginning, I was more into flips myself. Like, it's how I started with rentals and flips. And again, it was like, rule of thumb in construction is like, well, if there are no questions, just let it go. Yeah. And that's like a construction guy's mentality, right? Yeah. And then when I'm like, well, you're not a construction guy right now. You're like a sales guy for a construction company that you own. So it's like a different thing. And I'm like, well, you got to ask all these questions. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me get involved in that. Let me get involved in this. And, there's a lot of back and forth in regards to, people that are like, again, when you're in a space, especially a bathroom or kitchen, I always tell everyone, like, this is a game of inches. We call it inches because there's only so many feet. So we can't call it a game of feet because there's like 6. So, the game of inches means like we can only get so much in here now.
And it's hard because you want to make sure you give the client everything that they want.
It's hard, and especially ones on a budget when you start talking about moving plumbing from one side of the room to the other and this and that and this and this, and especially plumbing because that's your most expensive trade that they see is this. They just see dollar signs and they see markup and they see more money going into a project. And, ultimately that's what I tell people is that's a decision you have to make.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's where I would say, I mean, not to interrupt, but that's where my strength is because I understand how it all works. And so for me, I don't move a lot of sinks unless I need to, or a lot of gas lines, or, I try not to move a toilet. I mean, I know the things that cost the most money to move. So if I can design around them to keep them and cost, low, those are the things that I kind of look at. It's easy to go into a blank slate and be like, we're just going to put this here and this here, and we're going to do this. But when you have existing plumbing and you have existing fixtures, you have to be able to, you got a little bit of play. But, unless you're doing a full remodel, I mean, that's when the big bucks hit.
Big bucks.
Big bucks hit. You start moving everything around.
Big
so
bucks.
I try not to do that if I don't have to, but sometimes you have to. So.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you guys work a lot and I could be wrong. I'm only just going off because you do a lot of work with Penrod, and that's a good friend of mine, and that's how we got introduced. You guys do a lot of the Upper St. Clair, Mount Lebanon, older homes and stuff like that. Now, those become challenges because of just the size of them.
Right.
They're just either not very big, or they can't do this, they can't do that. I don't do a ton of work in those areas. I maybe only done a handful of projects, but I've done hundreds in Peters.
Yeah.
And that's more my market. And it's always the soaker tub. The soaker tub and the vaulted ceiling with the skylight. I'm like, we can't do shit. I'm like, there isn't shit to put here. This thing is fucking huge. And there's nothing to put here that's 8 feet wide, that's 6 feet deep, and then has a fucking skylight over with a
No
vaulted
bathroom
ceiling.
needs to be 1,000 square feet. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care. No master bath. It's just a waste of
I'm
space.
like, what are we doing? Like, what should we put here? I'm like, I don't know, swimming pool? Like, I don't know.
It's true,
You
yeah.
can't do anything really because, like, your shower with the vault comes weird unless you lower the roof line, which we're doing in one, and Peter's coming up. We're dropping the vault down and making the whole ceiling outside flat and making the shower like 9 by 9 because it goes into like
car
the
wash.
soaker. Yeah, it's just like
car wash.
because you have no options at those points, you know, and that becomes a challenge. And every bathroom I walk into, they're like, "Yeah, we don't want that anymore."
The tub.
I'm like, "Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, we know." I'm like, "Would you like to replace it with soaker tub?" Like, "No, we don't really take baths."
Yeah.
I'm
No
like,
way.
"Okay."
Although I had a client
Okay.
who told me she didn't want a shower. She only wanted a tub. And then I was like, oh, that's not good for resale. That's like,
And there's that too, you know, and those are things that, you know, we say as well when we're advocating, like, you know, you get that, like, hey, we don't really want a tub, like we do a stand-up shower. I'm like, do you plan on living here for the rest of your entire life? It's a hard decision to make. If you don't, you should probably put a tub in here.
Yeah.
Just because anybody with kids needs a tub, you got to put the kids in the tub.
but I love, don't get me wrong. I mean, a giant bathroom is a dream to design. It's also really expensive. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's the other thing too. I don't think a lot of people in Peters realize when they buy these homes and they're like, oh, we'll redo the master bath someday. And then when they get the $75 to $100K price tag to redo that size of a bathroom, they suddenly
They'll be like,
everybody
"Whoa,"
wants to
I
keep
mean,
their
like-
bathroom.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, that's the give and take of that world.
Right.
And you know, we've talked about it, and the same as us. Like, I'm very good at the 550 to 800 price point. I'm not truly built for the million and above. We do 4 or 5 a year, 4 a year, probably in the millions. And we've talked about it, like you coming in and kind of helping us out a little bit, because the design process of it is just so much longer. Because for one, you have a house that's 4,400 square feet to 5,000 square feet or above, and you have elaborate finishes now. Now you have, you know, stone fireplaces to the ceiling. You have ceiling details, whether it's coffer, whether it's tray, whether it's beams, whether it's what type of wood's going in the beam, maple, cherry, mahogany, cedar, pine. Now we have stack cabinets, double cabinets with lights. We have double islands now. We have all these things that are just, and the new one for us that we're getting all the time, this probably would have nothing to do with your world, but it's like full radiant heat and everything is like
Really?
the new thing for like everybody. Everybody
Like the
wants
whole house?
it's
Or
starting
just
to
most of the
become-
bathrooms?
garage, basement, and now we're getting into the first floor, second floor, whole house radiant heat tubes. And I'm like, we have one coming up. First time I've ever been sticker shocked in my entire life. It's a 2,100 square foot house, radiant heat, basement, garage, first and second floor. My price, $71,000.
That's a lot.
That's not including your furnace and AC.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
your-
Then you still have that expense on top of it.
It's a $90,000 HVAC system
That's insane.
for a 2,000 square foot house.
That's insane.
It's insane. I've never done.
I don't know if I could spend that.
I
I don't know if
couldn't.
I could sleep at night if I spent that. I do like my Tootsies to be warm, but I don't know the tune of $90,000.
for your entire house.
For my whole house.
You can just do a furnace. You know?
Right.
I brought that up to them. They're like, we can't do that because it goes back to what we have in our house now.
Oh, that's
is
what they
that.
have.
Yeah,
And they're willing to do that.
they're willing to pay for it
Jeez
when
Louise.
it's that type of stuff. Yeah, it's I've learned a lot over the design aspect, just because again, when I have our vendors and I have our people come in and people like you that come in, I'm like, listen, I don't know. So you tell me, like, what's selling right now? You know, what are you guys in the vendor world selling more than this? I've looked at probably 100 million Pinterest boards. And, you know, the only downside that I've ever found to Pinterest is like, it's the most elaborate things a lot of times. Like, we lost a basement a couple months ago. Guy showed us like 15 Pinterest boards and went all down through it and everything of all elaborate, everything. I'm like, yeah, your basement's like 220. He's like, whoa, man.
Yeah.
I was thinking like 120. I'm like, well, you better knock all that Pinterest way down.
Yeah.
You know,
People don't realize, I mean, all of that is material and time and design and figuring all that out. I mean, it adds up.
yeah, I mean, even when
Totally
you're,
adds up.
I mean, especially when you're getting into like, you know, the projects with the takeoff, if you're doing takeoffs or you're doing what for the materials, or if you're buying the materials as the designer and all that stuff. I mean, because I mean, just from what we do in construction, the takeoff portion alone is forever. It just takes so long. And then it's, you know, are you adding the right overages to the materials, making sure the materials are coming right, or do you make sure that that person ordered the right things? So do you typically order all the materials for your clients, or you kind of just give that to the contractor?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, it depends. And sometimes the materials, you know, like if I was doing, let's say, a bathroom, for example, then a lot of times if I'm designing the cabinetry, then obviously I'm handling that. The fixtures, you know, the sinks, the faucets, the toilet, you know, the pretty stuff, the tile. That's the kind of stuff I handle, but like the drywall, you know,
those are like rough materials.
No.
Right.
But like, I mean, on something
All
like
finished
that,
materials.
finished
is
materials,
kinda-
pretty much, yeah. And same thing with the kitchen. I would say it's pretty much similar to that.
So are you on site whenever like demo gets done, and then you mark out the kitchen again just to double check your measurements, make sure it works? Are you there with the contractor, like going through that? Is that like
Yes and no. I mean, again, it kind of depends. Like, you know, contractors that I know and trust, I'm like, here's the plans. This,
make sure
you
it
know,
works?
I mean, again, I make sure that this very expensive piece of custom cabinetry fits this space.
Yeah, 'cause
Don't screw it up.
It's gonna be 12 weeks to get another one.
You're going to rebuild the wall.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, but that's, you know, but that you have to be within the process though. And it's constant communication, making sure everything's where it needs to be. But again, the people that I work with on both ends, on the contractor end, on the builder end, the cabinetry end, I trust.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I work with them. Because I wouldn't work with them if I didn't trust them. And there has to be that level as well, you know.
And I would imagine that you offer multiple services of whether it's full hands-on, meaning like you're 100% in with the contractor, you're the one that talks, kind of the buffer in between, or you're just like, hey, I'll come in, do a consulting design fee, put a mood thing together. And
I used to.
Okay.
So I
great.
used
Glad
to.
we brought it up.
Yeah. No.
So what services what is your bread and butter now?
I mean, now it's full service.
Okay.
Because what I found, and I've done this before, and it's just a pain, to be honest with you. It's no fun for anyone. So if I sell, you know, to a client, and I give, let's say, the client a design, and I'm like, okay, here's all the finishes, here's everything you need, here you go, beautiful bathroom, everything, and then she hands it to the contractor. It's like that game, you know, where you like whisper, and by the end you get like a totally different thing.
I totally get where you're going with this.
And so
I get exactly where you're going.
And so
with
the
this.
problem is that you can put this all together and literally hand just like, here you go, here's your beautiful bathroom. And then 6 months later or a year later, when you've completely forgotten the project and what's going on, the phone starts. Hey, do you remember? I'm like, oh my God, I am digging through emails.
Well, because they probably went with some contractor that's not in your preferred list.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. I seen
That is
exactly
always where it
I seen
goes.
exactly where, because
And
the
then-
contractor's saying, well, she picked
God.
this doesn't work for this.
This is never going to work. And the next thing you know, I'm marching down and I'm like, this is not how I want to do business.
I seen that coming.
Yeah.
I didn't when I first mentioned the thing. Again, that's why I like doing this, because you see different perspectives on everyone's business. And as soon as you said not anymore, I was like, I think I know why.
Yeah,
and that makes
a couple
complete
gray
sense.
hairs and a few
Sure.
martinis later,
Well,
and I
because
was
you're
like,
not
I
getting,
can't do
and
this
also
anymore.
you're not getting paid for, that's not your job. You
Right.
fulfilled your obligation.
And
to
what are
that
you going to
person.
do? Say, no, I'm not going to help you. No, I'm not going
No,
to
you're
do
gonna
this.
eat shit like the rest
No,
of us
I would be
do.
like, oh no, I'm here to help you. And then meanwhile, I'm just so mad at myself because I'm like, I just wasted so much of my time, which is in my mind the most valuable thing that I have.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't do that anymore. As much as I, would love to
Yeah.
be able to be like sell these beautiful packages.
Yeah, right.
In theory, awesome idea. Terrible in the execution.
Yeah.
No way. I'm done. So now I just, call the contractor all day long and yell and be like, why didn't this get done? Or how's this? Or what do you need? And it works out better. And it's just honestly, it's what gives the client the best outcome.
Sure.
So in the end, that's what has to be
because
done.
again, you're getting multiple opinions wrapped around a scenario of, what I always say about contractors, and this happens to us too. They'll be like, well, my uncle came over, he built this. I said you did it wrong. I'm like, yeah, hold on now. I'm like, well, why didn't you ask your uncle to do it?
Yeah.
Nobody says that, but in your head, that's the first thing you think, right? You're like, why didn't you just get your uncle to do this? I think there's, a mentor of mine always told me that contractors are like boxers. They all think they're the best. And you're going to get 9,000 opinions about why somebody else did something wrong to make them look better in that certain scenario. Listen, this is construction. You can get to the same fucking outcome doing it 7 different ways. Now, the 5th, 6th, 7th way might take 4 times as long as 1, 2, 3, and 4, but you might get there, And that's why there's an area in construction of fixed costs, variable costs, this, that. And again, at the end of the day, I agree with you. That makes complete sense to me that if you're the designer, you damn well want to know what's going on. Now, it was nice to hear the designer that we've never worked with, and she's not even from here. She's from the Carolinas, I believe, but does a lot of 84 lumber stuff. And she was like, listen, this is a very well put together home. She's like, typically, this goes much worse. Like, I'm usually picking you apart and destroying you at this point. She's like, I really don't have that. And I'm like, well, whenever you give us exactly what you want and we're communicating and you're coming in and you're in the rough and you're in this and you're questioning this and then, we have multiple meetings along the project, we should get to the end and we should all be like, all right, that turned out pretty
But it's
damn
the
well.
communication.
Correct.
And that's the thing that's key. You have to be able to communicate and you have to be able to work together, and it doesn't always happen. And it's a two-way street, just as much as I need to communicate what's going on, it's a two-way street.
Yes. So I always tell everybody in my company, I'm like, guys, so I'm I'm so fucking annoying with efficiency that I think everybody in my office hates me. Because now it's like, I look at the numbers and I'm like, all right, well, can we be 10% more efficient? If you're 10% more efficient in a $10 million company, that makes a gigantic difference. And now it's like, well, we did that and we became way more efficient. Now I'm like, all right, well, there's way more to go. And it's like, well, let's keep dialing it in. Because I tell everybody, like, every problem that happens, every company will always trace back to miscommunication. Somebody didn't talk to somebody, and that's the reason why it's fucked up. That is the core to 100%. Every single thing that goes on. So I imagine change orders are a huge problem, but you're involved.
Yeah, they don't happen as much.
That's great.
Really.
Because that's a massive miscommunication area.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, I'm making sure to, like, you sign off on things, sign off on this, sign off on that, make sure the decision's made.
Of it.
But again, like, sometimes some of these balls get rolling and you can't stop them. If we're doing a kitchen or a bathroom and I have custom cabinetry in there and they're getting built by my guys over in Sugar Creek, I can't just call them. Some of them don't even have cell phones. Sure. I can't. There is not.
Can't make a change now.
The communication over there is very difficult. I'll be honest. It's getting better, but there's.
I'm assuming they're like Amish or something along the lines. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
we
so the way we do it with those guys is the same way you probably do it. Is we roll up blueprints and we send them in the mail. Yeah. USPS to your house in Middlefield, Ohio. I have the greatest story. So I did a hood for a customer. It was a copper hood, and it was made by this Amish guy in Indiana, and it was a $20,000 hood. So I couldn't screw it up, and we communicated where I would send him an email, and then it would actually print out on his fax machine, and then he would write back underneath on the same piece of paper that just printed out and then fax it back to my email. And that's how we communicated and built a gorgeous hood. I lost a lot of sleep over that. I bet. A $20,000 hood equates to the same as a $90,000 radiant heat for me.
Yeah, but it was gorgeous.
I
was
bet.
like all
I think I'd rather,
copper.
I bet.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. But yeah, that's how we did it. And I was terrified because I couldn't send pictures. I couldn't, get on the phone and have a conversation.
You don't care about
This
Pinterest.
is literally how we communicated, and we did it. And it was all hand-drawn. And that's the trust factor. I'm like, man, I hope to Jesus this thing's going to work out good. And it did. So that was a win.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that happen on the fly in construction. Unfortunately, the vendors and logistics is a big problem anymore. Whether things coming in damaged, because I know that, I don't use as high of end of cabinets as you guys kind of do. We use more of a Schrock as like our high end line, which has like 4 lines. But they show up to drop stuff off and they're not even strapped down.
Oh yeah.
Like they're just flying around in the back of this 18-wheeler, just getting the shit beat out of them. And, that's a lot of the stuff that I think a client, thinks like won't happen, but it's probably going to happen.
It happens every time.
Especially in a kitchen.
I don't think I've ever done a semi-custom kitchen where one cabinet
100%.
did not show up with a ding dent,
Oh, yeah.
catawampus, like whatever. Not one. It's every single time, no matter the size.
It doesn't matter how much you pay or who you're going
No.
with. Yeah.
It's just, and I think they almost figure that into their costs because they have no problem being like, all right, we'll just send you another one. It's like, well, we got to wait though, and it holds up the project.
Yep.
And, it is what it is. But those are the things I think at times the clients don't understand. And rightfully so. They're just not in the business. But
yeah, it was, early on, and even still, it's so weird that like an office mentality over a field mentality is so different, because to me, I'm like, I tell the guys, I'm like, okay, we just did a big Schrock basement we have going on in Peters, and they did jumbo slab island, double sided. Nice. The island was like $30,000.
I love it.
And yeah, it showed up, everything showed up. I'm like, did you guys like look through anything? They're like, no. I'm like, well, how do you know like anything's damaged? How do you know everything's there? So like we ended up like, we got over there the next day. I sent our cabinet guy that puts everything together, and he went through everything. He's like, yeah, dude, we're missing like 11 pieces to this thing. I'm like, so we have like back fillers missing, side piecings, all this and this is missing. It holds up template, holds up this, holds up that. And I'm like, this is why you check everything when it gets there. And for one, some cabinet companies only have like 20 days warranty, 21-day warranty.
Yeah.
If you don't turn that in, the warranty department, but like you ain't getting a new one.
But that's where I worry too about when I order semi-custom like kitchens, because I'm like, man, if I screw this up, if I forget a piece,
One piece.
yeah. Things could be and then it's
delayed.
like so then that's where you
Then
just
now it is your
sit.
fault.
I don't like when things are my fault.
Yeah. That's good.
But that's the kind of stuff that makes me anxious, because I'm like, man, I have to get this right. Even those fillers, and I always send them to
Yeah,
I'm like,
kitchen
am I
trim
getting
detail
everything? Is
and-
this everything? Please check my work, because you never know, and it could change the whole project. So
No, 100%. It's going to definitely change the timeline, which is
yeah.
going to piss everybody off.
Oh,
yeah. And rightfully so. I understand that it's an emotional standpoint and that's a thing that in construction in a lot of times just gets overlooked, is like, we do this every day. Like, this is like when shit happens, we're like, oh God. But the homeowner's like, I've heard about this, but now it's mine.
Yeah.
Freaking the fuck out.
I feel bad.
I do too.
Sometimes I do. I feel bad. I'm like, I'm so sorry, because, and it's like even though in the moments you just want to lose your mind, you know what I mean? And like, but you can't, because you have to make it like everything's cool. Like, it'll be fine. Everything's fine. And then you leave and you're like, oh my God, it's not fine. This is not good. Oh, the end of the world is coming.
Yeah, I've fortunately built a buffer with myself over the last 6 years to where like, if I hear about it, it's fucking stage 5. Like, we are in like full blown. This is bad. Like, we need some answers right now on some things. But yeah, it's always a difficult spot when you're trying to juggle as many pieces as what goes into, all of this. I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of moving parts that just goes into a kitchen or a bathroom. We're not specialized contractors anymore. Like me, I'm ground up. I got to do every bathroom. I got to do a kitchen, but then I might have to do another kitchen in the basement, and that becomes tough. There's a ton of things that go into this, and that's why I feel that a designer is important in a lot of these aspects. There are things that as just a contractor that you're going to overlook. Now I know some builders are bringing some of the designers in-house, like I know Infinity does. They have a few designers. But again, they do a lot of extravagant, different details in a lot of their homes. I think they're one of the more of, I don't know a lot of other production builders that kind of do that. I mean, I'm sure some of them do, but I know from like build on your own lot stuff, like what I do, I mean, nobody does. I mean, it is like, this is the floor plan. You can't change shit. Here's your options. There's 4.
All the changes cost money. And that, again, like if you're trying to stay within a price point, I think, when it comes to hiring a designer for anything, I think the big thing is what your goal is, right? So if you're building a house and you're trying to do it on a budget and you're trying to stay there is benefits of having a designer to help streamline that process. But then on the other side of it too, like if you're looking to build something that is a showpiece, when you bring in a designer too. So, I think it really comes down to the goals of what you want and making sure that the designer you pick understands those too, because there are designers that are out there that are wonderful and great and put together amazing things, but they don't like to work on a specific budget or under a certain number. And I respect that. I understand it. But, that's the thing too. People have to be really aware of what they hire and who they hire and what their goal is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important on all ends. I think you have to understand who you're hiring as a contractor and you know who you're hiring as a designer, right? It was definitely. I agree with you. That's a very interesting statement when you say you're working with a budget that can help too, because one thing that happens when you build a custom home is there's no replica.
Right.
And I also think that custom is a loose word.
Right.
I fucking hate the word custom.
I really would.
I fucking hate it.
Too.
It's a loose word because I'm going to tell everybody out there, if anyone that calls them a custom home builder and they have floor plans available, you're not a custom home builder. You're not.
Right.
You're just not. I call myself semi-custom. I've done full custom ones, 100%, but I'm more of like, hey, we have X amount of floor plans. Let's get something 60% close and then moving around and make it yours. Right. That's more custom, even what most people do. Nowadays, having someone there to help you along with your budget is going to do this. The emotional roller coaster of leading up to a new home or a new bathroom or a new kitchen, regardless, all of them come with big price tags. That's 100%. What they are. We all sell high dollar products here, and there's an emotion attached to that. Now, what a designer and someone is going to do is stop you from riding up the emotional hill and then realizing you can't afford it and then sliding back down the hill and then going back up the hill again. Because when you go back down the hill, what's going to happen is you're now so deflated because you realize that you can't have exactly what you want. Mm-hmm. And that is what a lot of people do. They have nobody there to allow them or stop them when they are above their budget. So that's why when people come in and you don't tell the contractor or the designer or whoever you're working with your true budget, you're only hurting yourself.
Amen. And this is the hard part, is nobody wants to talk about money.
No.
Which is hilarious to me. I'm like, this is all about money. This is your money that you're spending.
And my service costs money.
Right. The first conversation we should be having with clients on the front end is about money. And the clients should be having with us is, this is my budget. This is what I want to get for my budget. Is it possible? Yep. And then it's a yes or no. Mm-hmm. Because if it's not possible, then all right, where do I need to be to get this? Boom. And nobody wants to have the conversation. No. And it's like, we have to.
No,
we have to.
Because you're not going to want to have this conversation with me 6 months from now and realize that you're so over budget and we all just waste each other's time.
100%. And I think, like you said too, when I put a design together for a client, the amount of time I spend putting it together, and I think people don't realize, it's like, this stuff doesn't just sometimes it does come out of my ear, whatever, but I gotta stop and think, what am I doing here? What's the goal? What am I looking to and I never want to be like everybody else. I want to be different. So then I spend all this time going into something and to bring it to the client to be like, oh, it's beautiful. I love it. I'm so happy. And then the price tag comes. Yeah. Oh, it's like somebody just ruined your birthday. I mean, it's the worst.
I mean, because it's easy for anybody, and I say this all the time, even to my sales guy and everything else. I'm like, do you understand that time's your worst enemy with this game? There's a million reasons why you shouldn't spend any money on your kitchen and bathroom or build a new house. There's 100 million reasons every day. You could come up with any reason. Be like, you know what? I just don't want to spend that now. And it's easy to say, let's just use, for example, my fee, let's say my fee to manage a project's $100,000. They'll be like, oh my God. I'm like, do you know that that's spread out across like 9 months? And that's spread out across like, I don't know, 492,000 phone calls and like 8,000 emails and like a billion things that go wrong that you never find out about. And like, you don't see any value in that?
Well, you also pay for experience. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I love my friends. I love my family. I love the people in my world. But when I call and go, oh my God, can you just help me real quick and pick out a paint color? Can you pick out? I'm like, this is what people pay me for.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to help, but
Sure.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it comes down to your experience and what you've done and what you've built. And that's why you are what you're worth. You know, I mean, that's why you charge what you charge.
Yeah, because I mean, incrementally, business goes one way. And this is the only way that I think business works. And people can disagree with me, and that's fine. I think when you start out in any business that you're going to do, you should start out your services, rock fucking bottom prices,
100%.
give your shit away, make sure it's better than everybody else's, and everything you touch is perfect. And then as you go along the game, you incrementally earn your value.
I was just going to say, earn your value. Earn your value.
Because when you first start out, guess what? You're not worth fucking shit. I hate to break it to you. You're not worth shit. That's the reality of it. Yes, in your head, you might be a fucking superstar, but nobody else knows or cares.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's what's hard too, because sometimes in the design world, a lot of designers get caught up in the fact that they have a degree in design and they did this and they did this. And, they're like, hey, do you have that? I'm like, no, I don't. I'm like, but you know who else doesn't? Joanna Gaines. And look what she's done. So
Empire.
An empire.
It was an empire built off brand. Mm-hmm. Everybody understand that. But do you know how she built a brand? Because I've read the book, I've read all their books, and I've watched the start of their show, and I've read their documentary because I'm interested on how people build gigantic brands. Yeah. So whenever I first got into the game, I learned that when I built my first 2 spec houses, everybody asked, who's the builder? Mm-hmm. I didn't have a name. Nobody. So they're like, I don't know if this guy's going to be here to warranty all my shit. So like at that moment, I realized that brand's over everything. Like, why do we buy Vans? Why do we buy Nike? Why do I buy this boat over this boat? Because I like this brand. That's power of brand. She built an enormous brand that just got exploded based upon TV. But they put in a ton of work before that. They gave away shit for years and years and years and years and years. And people become impatient in this game and feel that we aren't valued. I'm sure as a designer, you get the feeling that people can be like, I can do that.
Yeah, I'm like, go ahead. Go ahead.
Let them. I can pick paint.
I always say, let them.
I can pick paint.
Let them.
So I tell people, I'm like, I can do this bathroom myself. Then fucking do it.
Yeah.
Fucking do it. Because here's the thing. I have had friends and associates in this game that have built their own house. And I always ask them, would you do it again? Fuck no is the answer. No, and no. I'm like, oh, okay, why? Why would you not do it again? I don't know, because I had to dial every moment of my life to it.
And you've never done it. And so you're trying to accomplish this massive task, which is great. Good for you. I mean, that's what you want, go. But people don't realize there's value in, I've done it 100 times or I've done it 1,000 times. I've streamlined my process.
And that's my point to this, everyone, is if you want something done the correct way the first time, it's better to spend more money on it the first time. Bring in the people who know what they're doing. Bring in the people who are going to build you something nice, who are going to design you something nice. If you have problems with visual things or you're not sure what you want, call in somebody who does. Because 100%. Guess what? The most expensive construction and design work, I'm sure, is the design work you do twice. Mm-hmm. That's the most expensive shit you'll ever run into.
Absolutely.
And it comes back. You made a great point. Our business now is only focused on the experience. Only. So, because I've said this to every single buddy, and I get a lot of people that ask me about how you start business, how do you scale business. I said, go on and read my reviews. Every one of them will say, oh, the house is great, but such and such did this, and such is that, and this was great. This software they have, that's fucking great. Hey, Stephanie, she did a great job in selections. Oh, dealing with Mark in sales, he was amazing. That's an experience. Oh, we had an issue at the end, but they handled it immediately. Those guys did what they said they were going to do. That's the experience. That's the separation aspect of, businesses who talk and who care, and I'm sure in your world, There is a million different avenues people can go. And just like my world, like we are in a world that is a lot of us. We're fighting for space everywhere we kind of go. And, you know, I'm sure when you first started out, it was just like anybody else. And I would love to know how you kind of built it up. But did you build up most of your brand from word of mouth?
Yeah, all of it. I mean, everything.
Everything.
I mean,
so do you do
I've
any?
never advertised.
I was gonna say, do you do any advertising at all?
I've never
other than social media platforms.
Yeah, social media, but
because it's free.
Right.
Right.
I mean, for now. But yeah, that's all I've done. I mean, I'm sure I could go get a billboard or do a lot of other things, but that's how I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be organic. I wanted it to be something that evolved over time and grew. I didn't want to just, you know, advertise and then get a bunch of business that I can't handle, and that ship sinks first year. That's not what I wanted. Yep. So, and one thing I wanted to say too, when you're talking about reading the reviews, it's one of the things that I do with my competitors. Cat's out of the bag. I read the reviews because I want to see what everybody's doing wrong and how I can do it better and do it right. And the experience thing is 120% spot on.
Yeah, so you have to listen to the people who are buying your services. So like the people that are on whoever services are going to lay out their thoughts. Okay, well, these are my people. Let me hear their thoughts. I'm not a guy who reads the comments on a lot of shit, but I am a guy that will sit here and listen to your thoughts, you know, and if you're someone who is, because what you're going to get on social media is two things. You're going to get people, what we call the lurkers. They're just the ones in the background that don't click like, or they don't do shit, but they read. Or you got the people that are on there just typing away and they're, you know, finger gangsters and they're keyboard gangsters and they talk all this shit and they can't afford any of the services that they're even talking about. So those are the two people. The first option is an actual buyer. The second one's just someone who can't afford shit, you know? So I like to listen to, you know, how I built my business early on is when I first came in and I was the guy who was trying to break into the market, I was the last builder they would visit because I was the last one that they ever heard about. Like, oh, you should go check out them guys. They just moved into town. They're doing some cool stuff, yada, yada. And everybody would come in. They're like, we don't know you. Like, some of the houses you built are really nice. We don't know you. Okay, well, tell me how you ended up at me. Oh, well, we went to this person first, this person second, this person third. Okay, well, how was that? Well, this person didn't like it. Oh, this person offers this service, but like they don't do this service. Okay, well, this person does this. Okay, well, I didn't like that. Well, okay, I like this about that person. Okay, well, how I formulated our business is I did everything that they liked and everything they don't like.
Right.
So now I'm kind of like, I'll do everything for you because the way I look at businesses is the ones that blow up are the ones that are about convenience. Sure, I'll do all your permitting for you. I'll do all your stormwater management plan. I'll do all the stuff that everyone else does. I'll do all the stuff that's liability. I'll do your driveway. I'll do your sidewalks. I'll do your landscaping. I'll do your excavation. I'm going to give you hard fix numbers on everything. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You know, and that's how we kind of got into it in the sense of when you look at, and that's what I did. I went and read every review from every one of my competitors in every industry and every market that they're in. And everything was notorious of like, oh, it sounded great in the beginning, but it didn't end up well in the end.
And that just makes my stomach churn. You know what I mean? It's just like, that is the absolute opposite of the experience I want with anything in life. You know what I mean? Like, I want consistency. There is something to be said for consistency.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize that. I mean, in any business or even in any relation, consistency is a huge, huge thing.
Consistency in construction is the most stressful thing there is because we are in a world that there's only two options. One, it goes right, and one, it goes bad. There's nobody lands in the middle ground and was like, you know what? It was okay. Yeah. I guess. I had to pay for it.
You never hear that.
You never hear that. It was, oh, I got exactly what I paid for, and that's amazing. Or, oh, I fucking hate it. You know, and that's a very stressful world because when you're a contractor and you're doing 40 plus jobs a year, you got to be fucking perfect on them all. or you are in big trouble. And that is an issue because when you get into these small pockets of the suburbs of Pittsburgh, you are in now mom's groups, you're in the groups of Upper St. Clair, you're in the Facebook feeds of Mount Lebanon, you're in the, and not even that, you now have Facebook groups that are just for that community. Like this one community has a Facebook group and you're circling in it and it ain't good. And that's the tough part about the social status of, today with construction that was never available early on. And honestly, like, Pittsburgh being a very regulated state, we're not very regulated in construction.
No.
It's $50 for a contractor. No tests, no nothing, no this, just a certificate from the Commonwealth says congratulations.
It's terrifying.
Terrifying.
So
that goes back to picking who you work with very selectively in regards to that kind of stuff. But no, I mean, I had an amazing experience working with you. Everything came in on time. Everything, I know you were freaking out about it. I had a lot going on in the background, so I really didn't freak out about it as much. But I would have if it would have prolonged my process. And that's something that is, speaks volume because, again, it's hard nowadays just to find something that people that do what they say they're going to do.
That is like one of my pet peeves, honestly. That is the one thing I look for in anyone I'm doing business with. It's like, are you going to do what you say you're going to do? And you're going to do it right. Because,
Always.
And you have to give a shit. Yeah. And that's the thing is I find a lot of people just don't anymore. They don't give a shit. It's all about the dollar, which is great. I mean, I'm all about the dollar too, but at the end of the day, like the only reason I'm going to make more of those dollars is if I get repeat business and I get referrals and I get people who have seen my work and like it and want to use, and I have to give a shit. Yeah. And it's amazing how many people don't.
Most don't. Yeah, most don't. And, you can see that in a lot of businesses that think very short term, or they think that real estate or construction or, I designed my kitchen and now I'm a designer that's going to be profitable. Just because, there is a fee. There is a fee for someone who is good, and that is that you're going to have to be okay with that. I was okay with it because I knew I was going to get what I wanted. I knew that, but I also knew that by paying your fee, my time would be back. Right. I need my time because, for one, this is a stressful time for me moving from one office to another office. I have to now redo my entire business model by moving here. I can't think about furniture and paints and this and that. Like, I'm already the one that's kind of in the background, like making sure the contractors get there, they need to get there. Because, again, like you said, I move at a speed that is...
Oh, you guys were like lightning. I swear. Like, I came in and I was like, wait, what? This is happening now? And then I was like, shit, I'm behind. Yeah. And I don't like to be behind. And so the whole time I felt like I was playing this game of like cat and mouse with you. Like, Brian would go hard. And I'm like, oh, my God, I got to catch up.
Yeah,
it worked, though.
It worked great. No, I had an amazing experience. And I'm very fortunate because I'm still... a guy that typically leaves a little bit later than most. Summer, I'm not so much there, but every day I usually will turn off the lights. I get to see the whole house again. I still see the house all the time. I walk through the model almost every day. The downstairs and everything that we really came up with. I tell this to everybody, I wouldn't have picked none of this. None of it. Because again, but it's not geared to me. It's taking that separation out of the game and understanding. And I think that's hard for a lot of people. They're like, well, this is my style. Well, that's not that person's style. Yeah. Like identifying with the person you're working with and their style becomes very difficult. I think we went back and forth. I think the one thing that was the dining room furniture. I think that was it. It was the one thing. Yeah, I was like,
I forget what I even picked the first time.
I think it was the chairs. Even I was like, I don't like the fucking chairs.
It was a hard no. You're like, no, fuck no. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that was the only thing you said.
Didn't like it. Other than that, every other thing, I was like, I love the living room furniture. I love even just the little artwork and the subtle plant stuff. That's where it separates. It all ties in together into one thing, and you're like.
Well, the really challenge too was that you didn't replace any of the kitchen cabinets.
No.
Or any of the cabinets for that matter, and the hardwood floors or the carpeting. Yeah. So everything had to go with what was there, and that was what
challenging.
That was but that was a paint fix. The paint did wonders.
Yeah, and that was something I didn't want to spend money on. But
I know,
we
you're
did,
like-
and I'm glad we did. I'm glad because
But it made a huge
it
difference.
does. And I need to listen when I'm doing things too. Like I'll go on the end of the cheap end too. I'm like, I just don't want to pay that. You know, I don't want to pay $22,000 to paint this whole thing. Like I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. We did it, and you know, ultimately, it saves you the money of the cabinets and the carpet and the
Yeah.
floor, which is going to cost you way more than $22,000. So you know, it's me just getting out of my own way, and I'm like, all right, I don't want to pay this giant thing, but I'm like, but it's going to cost way more if I do it the other way.
But
you
the
know?
paint I think the paint turned out best.
No, for sure. And that'll be
Honestly.
something, again, you know, we'll probably do the kitchen probably this year, if not early next, to do the kitchen. And we'll talk about that and doing some nicer cabinets and that, some shock
Yeah,
stuff.
but it looked really good.
It
I mean,
does.
I mean, I was amazed.
It's
I
just-
was even shocked. I
Yeah.
was like, wow, this is
No,
so
it turns
nice.
great. It just fucking it annoys me, like the fridge panel's not closed in. And
Oh,
like that
yeah.
shit. Like the small details of like the way a kitchen should really work. Like it doesn't have that. And I'm like, oh my God, I get these. Every time I look at it, I'm like, hey, cabinets the fuck out of here. I get them the fuck
Well,
outta
you
here.
keep staring at that kitchen, getting mad, and then let me know when you get mad
I
enough,
can't
and then we'll
it.
take care of it.
No, I can't take it. I walk through there. I'm like, I just can't. I can't handle
Well,
it.
see, me, it's that post in between the kitchen and the living room that sent me into a
No,
tizzy.
I built that house.
I know.
No, I didn't build the model, but years ago when I first
Oh,
started,
like you actually built
Yes.
that house.
somebody
So
brought,
it's structural.
Somebody brought me that house, and we built a version of it. And it was a little bit different. The workout hub wasn't as big, but it was that house.
Oh, that's
It had that fucking post. And I was like, and then when I walked into the model,
I mean, it's
and
obviously
seen it,
structural, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you
yeah.
can eliminate it. You just got to put a bigger beam in. They just didn't want to because they cheaped out. So, like, to me, I would have put a bigger piece of steel in all the way across it, or another, beefed up LVL and got rid of that fucking post. That post is the bane of my fucking existence.
It's terrible.
I despise it.
I think you should get rid of it.
I don't even know how at this point. I don't know if I can. I was talking to Ryan about it all the time. I'm like, dude, we got to get rid of this thing. Because we have our meeting today. We have a Monday meeting at the table, the circle table.
And then the breakfast nook.
So we have an owners meeting there at like 1:30 every Monday. And I sit looking at
the
it. And I'm
post.
like, I fucking hate this thing. And I go like this at it. Like, it's like,
That was like the first thing I noticed too. And I like spent all this time like, how do I design around it so it's not noticeable? There was no hope.
no, because we did on 2 chairs and we did all that. Like, yeah.
There was no.
Yeah, the nice part is it's so nice that I think I'm going to have Thanksgiving there this year.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
It's nice. But, so how can some people find you? Where are your social sites then?
All right. So I'm on Instagram at HSD Services. Facebook, same thing. And then my website is hsdservices.com.
Awesome. She is an amazing designer. She's also helps donate to our water sports activities and all the things that we're involved in. Amy is one of a kind here. You will not be let down. Go check out her services on Instagram, Facebook. It was a real pleasure digging into your story today. All I got to say is I had an absolute amazing experience with her. If you want to come see some of her work, our office is located on Washington Road, right on 19. Can't miss it, heading towards the Meadows. You can come in there and see all the design work, all the furniture work that she's done, and more. All right, everybody. I hope you got some value out of the episode, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.